It was just a few seconds of audio, but it carried years of pain. I just don't know how to say this out loud. And my daughter never shared with me.
It was one of those ordinary moments that blend seamlessly into the rhythm of a typical day, the kind where you're not expecting anything unusual, certainly not something that will lodge itself in your memory. I was going about my business when my phone buzzed with a familiar notification, a voice message from my daughter. Nothing remarkable about that. She often sends quick updates, questions about a family recipe, a reminder about an upcoming gathering, or just a cheerful note to brighten my day. So I slipped my phone out, already mentally preparing to hear something brief and predictable. Maybe she needed me to check the mail while she was away. Maybe she wanted to confirm plans for the weekend. I didn't think twice. There's a comfort that comes with recognizing the name of someone you love, a sense that whatever awaits is part of the ongoing conversation of life. And when it comes to your child, even your adult child, there's always that instinctive readiness to listen, to respond, to simply be present. So, with the casual confidence of a parent who's heard thousands of little messages over the years, I tapped the play button. At that moment, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. I certainly wasn't bracing myself. To me, it was just another everyday exchange, the sort that reassures you everything is fine. There wasn't a hint of suspense in the air, nothing to suggest that this message had taken a wrong turn in the digital universe. I didn't notice any odd pauses or unusual context. Her name on the screen looked exactly as it always did: familiar, innocent, routine. But sometimes the most unexpected moments arrive disguised in the ordinary. Sometimes a simple tap on a screen can push open a door to something you weren't meant to hear. And as that tiny audio waveform began to dance, I still had no inkling whatsoever that this message was not intended for me, that it belonged to a different conversation entirely, one that was private, personal, and meant for her husband's ears alone. What started as a normal moment was about to turn into something that made me stop, blink, and rethink what routine really means. The moment the audio began, I sensed almost immediately that something was off. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, nothing loud or shocking. It was simply the tone of her voice. There was a softness to it, a warmth laced with a kind of intimacy that parents don't typically hear from their children, not directed at them anyway. It was the kind of voice you instantly recognize as belonging to a completely different audience, a different emotional space. Within the first few seconds, my brain stumbled, trying to reconcile the familiar sound of my daughter with the unfamiliar meaning behind it. I remember this strange split-second pause where I didn't stop the message right away. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was the same instinct that keeps you reading a sentence twice because you're sure you misunderstood it the first time. My mind raced through possibilities. Had she begun by talking to someone else and then intended to pivot to me? Was she joking? Was this some sort of mix-up, a message spliced together accidentally? But as the words continued, gentle, affectionate, clearly directed at someone she loved in the way spouses speak to each other, the truth settled over me with undeniable clarity. This wasn't mine. This message had slipped into my phone by mistake, landing in my inbox like a bird that took a wrong turn in the sky. And as soon as I realized it, a peculiar cocktail of emotions washed over me. A pinch of embarrassment because I was hearing something that wasn't meant for me, a stir of awkwardness because no parent plans for this sort of moment, and oddly enough, beneath it all, a quiet sense of tenderness, because what I was hearing was the sound of my grown daughter living a life that was now hers, fully and beautifully. I stopped the message as soon as the truth clicked, but even those few seconds were enough. enough to make me exhale through a half laugh, half sigh, enough to make me glance around the room as if someone else had overheard, enough to remind me that our children eventually build whole worlds we parents only glimpse accidentally, and sometimes unintentionally. In that instant of realization, the line between what's meant for us and what no longer belongs to us became unmistakably clear. My initial reaction was a tangled mix of emotions, one of those odd, fleeting moments in life when your heart and mind seem to trip over each other trying to decide what you're supposed to feel. The first thing that hit me was sheer surprise, the kind that makes your eyebrows jump before you even consciously understand why. It was as if my brain fired off a tiny alarm bell. Something here is not matching the parent-child script I was expecting. Then came confusion, soft but insistent. My thoughts scrambled to catch up with what my ears had just processed. It's funny how the mind, even in moments like this, tries desperately to make the situation logical. For a split second, I wondered if maybe she was speaking metaphorically, or if this was some kind of playful message that would suddenly pivot into a completely ordinary question about errands or dinner plans. But as those few seconds stretched on, the truth became undeniable, and the confusion began to dissolve, making room for the next emotion that bubbled up: amusement. Not the laughing out loud kind, but the quiet, startled chuckle that escapes you when life catches you off guard. A soft, "Oh no, oh dear" amusement that dances somewhere between embarrassment and affection. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth, because truly, what else could one do? Moments like this don't come with instructions. There's no chapter in the parenting handbook titled, "In case your grown child accidentally sends you a message meant for their spouse, turn to page 47. All you can do is breathe and let the humor of the situation lighten the awkwardness. At the same time, there was a distinct sense of parental discomfort. Nothing drastic, just a gentle reminder that certain aspects of your child's adult life aren't yours to witness. And yet, layered underneath that discomfort was something unexpectedly touching: the realization that my daughter had grown into someone with a full, rich emotional life of her own, a partner, a home, a set of private moments that belong entirely to her and the person she chose to share her life with. So there I sat, half startled, half amused, feeling like I had stumbled into the wrong room at the wrong time. It wasn't a moment I would have chosen, but it was one that left me shaking my head, smiling, and silently promising myself to handle it with grace, and maybe just a tiny dash of humor. What I heard in those brief few seconds wasn't anything scandalous or dramatic. It was simply personal, unmistakably woven with the kind of closeness that exists only between two people who share a life, a home, and the quiet rituals of everyday love. Her voice carried that soft, familiar warmth, the one she uses when she's speaking to someone she trusts deeply. It was affectionate in the simplest, purest sense, the kind of tone that belongs to early morning conversations, sleepy check-ins, or those small exchanges couples share when they're apart for a few hours and want to bridge the distance. She said his name the way someone does when they've said it thousands of times and never grown tired of it. There was a lightness in her voice, too, like she was smiling while she spoke, and there was a certain playfulness, a soft teasing at the edges, that told me she was in a good mood, relaxed, and speaking from a place of comfort. She mentioned something about their plans later that day, something domestic and ordinary, the details of which she clearly expected only her husband to hear. It was the kind of message that builds the quiet glue in a marriage, a reminder of a shared commitment, a shared schedule, a shared life. What struck me most wasn't what she said, but how she said it. There was a sincerity, a gentle affection that reminded me of the early days of her own childhood, back when she would run to me with that same brightness in her voice, full of trust and closeness. But now that tone was being offered to someone else, someone who had become the center of her world in ways no parent could continue to occupy. Nothing in the message was concerning. If anything, it was reassuring. It told me she was happy, supported, intertwined with someone who cared for her deeply. And although the content itself was simple, everyday words spoken in a private context, it carried emotional weight for me as a parent. It was a tiny window into a part of her life I don't usually see, a reminder that she now shares her most tender moments with the partner she chose. It was affectionate, heartfelt, and unmistakably intimate in an emotional, not inappropriate way. A brief message, soft, warm, and meant for someone who was not me, yet one that lingered with me long after I stopped listening. The emotional impact of those few unintended seconds was surprisingly complex, like a sudden chord played on the piano, notes overlapping, blending, and resonating in ways I didn't quite expect. At first, there was a definite flicker of embarrassment, the instinctive kind that makes you straighten in your seat as if someone just walked in on you doing something you shouldn't. Even though I hadn't sought out the message and hadn't listened past the initial realization, there was still that parent's discomfort, that awareness of having momentarily stepped into a private space that didn't belong to me. It was a gentle awkwardness, but unmistakable. Right alongside that embarrassment was something else, something almost tender. I was unexpectedly touched, not because of the words themselves, but because of the emotion behind them. To hear my daughter speak with such warmth, such ease, such affection, it stirred something deep in me. It reminded me of the person she had grown into, the maturity she carried, the love she'd found and nurtured. There was a part of me that felt honored, in a strange, accidental way, to witness, even for a moment, the happiness she shared with her partner. Then came pride, a quiet, glowing pride that settled over me like a soft blanket. Parenting is a long, winding road full of uncertainties. You spend years hoping you're doing enough, teaching the right things, guiding without smothering, and suddenly, in that unintended moment, I heard evidence that she had built a life grounded in love and stability. She sounded confident, secure, open-hearted. She sounded like someone who had found her place in the world, and that realization filled me with a profound sense of fulfillment. There was also, admittedly, a faint sense of being unsettled, not in a negative way, but in a reflective one. It was a reminder that she now lived a life that didn't revolve around me anymore, a life with new priorities, new bonds, new intimacies I was no longer part of. And while that is the natural order of things, it still nudged at the quieter corners of my heart. It reminded me that the role of parent evolves, sometimes faster than we expect. In the end, the emotional impact was a delicate blend, a touch of awkwardness, a swell of pride, a warm ache of nostalgia, and above all, an unexpected gratitude for having raised someone capable of such genuine love. In the quiet moments after the message ended, I found myself drifting into an unexpected reflection, not just on the message itself, but on my daughter's life as an adult. It's a strange, almost surreal feeling when it truly sinks in that your child is no longer a child. You know it logically, of course. You've watched them grow, watched them move out, watched them build a life that gradually requires less and less of your direct involvement. But every now and then, something small, like an accidental voice message, brings that truth into sharp, unmistakable focus. I sat there thinking about how her world has expanded far beyond the boundaries of the home she grew up in. She has her own routines now, her own rhythms. There are inside jokes I'll never know, shared plans I'm not part of, weekend rituals that revolve around her and her husband rather than the family she came from. And that realization was both humbling and heartwarming. She isn't my little girl rushing through the hallway asking for help, approval, or advice. She's a woman with her own direction, her own responsibilities, her own partnerships. It made me reflect on how naturally she stepped into adulthood, how seamlessly she learned to manage her home, navigate her marriage, and build a future rooted in choices she made herself.
She has responsibilities I never assigned her, commitments to her partner, to her work, to the goals she now pursues. And there's a certain amount of pride in seeing her take on those roles with confidence, even if I'm no longer at the center of her orbit. But there's also a subtle ache that accompanies the pride. Not sadness exactly, more like the soft awareness that time has moved forward without asking my permission. It reminded me that parenthood is a lifelong balancing act between holding on and letting go. You spend years nurturing, guiding, protecting, only to watch your child step into a world where your presence becomes optional, occasionally invited, but no longer required. Still, the beauty of that realization lies in its honesty. She has a life that is fully hers, one she built with care, love, and hard work. And even if I stand more on the sidelines now, I can still admire the life she's shaping, grateful for the chance to witness the woman she's become. That brief, unexpected moment, hearing a message never meant for me, became a symbolic turning point, a quiet reminder of how much my role as a parent has changed over the years. When children are young, your presence fills every corner of their world. You guide them, correct them, protect them, and sometimes practically script their days. You're the safety net, the advisor, the provider, the constant. But as they grow older, the relationship shifts in ways that are subtle at first and then suddenly unmistakable. This accidental message was one of those unmistakable moments. Listening to her speak with such natural confidence, such assured tenderness, made it clear that she had stepped into her own life fully, without needing me to steady her anymore. It was both a proud realization and a gentle jolt. There was a time when she looked to me for answers, big and small, from tying shoelaces to navigating heartbreaks. But now she has someone else she turns to first, someone she confides in, plans with, laughs with at the end of a long day. It's not a loss, but it is a shift.
In that instant, I felt the reminder that parenting is not a permanent role of leadership. It evolves into something softer, quieter, more observant. The transition isn't marked by a single grand event. Instead, it reveals itself through small moments like this, moments that show you your child no longer needs your guidance in the same way. They still need your love, yes, your support, of course, but the daily decisions, the emotional partnerships, the inner circle of their life, these now belong to them. And so the role becomes one of respectful distance, not withdrawal, but recognition, a kind of love that says, I'm here if you need me, but I honor the life you've built without my direction. It requires a parent to step back, to allow space, to trust that the foundation you helped lay is strong enough to support the adult they've become. This transition can feel bittersweet. It carries pride in seeing your child thrive, but also the quiet understanding that your chapters in their life look different now. But that's the beauty of parenthood. It's not static. It grows, transforms, and matures just as your child does. And in that realization, brought on by a simple, misplaced voice message, I found a sense of peace, knowing that letting go is not losing them, it's respecting who they've become. Once the initial surprise faded and I'd had a moment to gather myself, I realized I now faced a delicate decision, one that every parent encounters sooner or later. How exactly do you respond when you accidentally overhear something that was never meant for you? Do you acknowledge it directly? Do you let it slide quietly into the forgotten corners of the day? Or do you bring it up with a touch of humor, hoping to ease any awkwardness? My first instinct was to pretend the whole thing had never happened. After all, only a few seconds of the message had played before I stopped it, and I hadn't heard anything inappropriate, just something clearly meant for different ears. Ignoring it would be the polite, unobtrusive option, a small, respectful gesture of giving her privacy back. There's a certain dignity in not making a big deal out of an honest mistake. But then another part of me considered the alternative, mentioning it gently, Not in a confrontational way, of course, but in the sort of tone that says, technology is tricky, isn't it? Sometimes being open about a small, awkward moment can actually strengthen a relationship. It's a tiny opportunity to show understanding, to reassure her that the boundary she values is safe with me. And yet, I also knew that bringing it up could make her feel embarrassed, even if I framed it kindly. Then there was the last option, the one that appealed to my sense of humor, teasing her lightly. Nothing cruel, nothing sharp, just a playful hint like, "I think your phone confused me with your husband today." A gentle joke can often diffuse tension, turning a potentially uncomfortable situation into a shared laugh. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that teasing might make her replay the moment in her head and feel far more awkward than she needed to. Ultimately, my decision rested on a simple principle: protect her comfort. She hadn't intended to involve me in this moment. It wasn't a confession or a secret, just a misplaced message. And so I chose the quiet path. I let it go. No comment, no nudge, no teasing, just a silent acknowledgement to myself and nothing more. It felt like the respectful thing to do, a small but meaningful way of honoring her independence and preserving her ease. Sometimes the best response isn't a response at all, but the choice to give someone the gift of discretion. That brief, unintended moment became an unexpected lesson in the significance of privacy and boundaries, even within the closest of relationships. As parents, we spend so many years involved in every detail of our children's lives that it can be difficult to adjust when those details slowly become theirs alone. We're used to being the ones who know everything: the scraped knees, the school projects, the heartbreaks, the triumphs. But adulthood reshapes that closeness in new ways, and this accidental message served as a gentle reminder of how important it is to respect those evolving spaces. Hearing something not meant for me, even something innocent, made me realize how vital it is to step back and allow my daughter the freedom of her own emotional world. Privacy isn't about secrecy, it's about ownership. It's about giving people the dignity of their own conversations, their own expressions, their own intimate connections. Even when those people are the ones you raised, the ones you love fiercely, the ones you'd once have given anything to protect from the smallest discomfort. In that moment, I felt the weight of responsibility, not to react, not to pry, not to let curiosity masquerade as concern. Instead, the responsibility was to quietly acknowledge the boundary that had been crossed by accident and to retreat from it with grace. It reminded me that love doesn't mean access. It doesn't grant permission to everything. Sometimes love means stepping aside, choosing silence, and allowing those we care about to keep the parts of their lives that belong solely to them. It also made me reflect on how easily technology can blur the lines we try to draw. A single misplaced tap, and suddenly a private message becomes public to the wrong person. But rather than being a cause for panic or discomfort, it can also be a moment of clarity, a reminder that boundaries must be honored, even when circumstances nudge us momentarily past them. Respecting personal space isn't a rejection, it's an act of trust. It says, "I believe in your ability to navigate your own life." And in respecting that, we strengthen our relationships rather than strain them. This tiny, accidental slip became a quiet affirmation of that truth, that the healthiest love, especially between parents and adult children, allows room for distance, privacy, and the independent worlds they have built. Reflecting on the entire experience, I realized that this small, accidental moment offered a surprisingly profound lesson about family, communication, and the natural evolution of parent-child relationships. At first glance, it might seem like a minor incident, just a misdirected voice message, a fleeting moment of unintended intimacy. Yet it carried weight because it revealed how much has changed, how much grows quietly in the spaces we don't always see, and how crucial it is to adapt as our children mature. One of the first lessons was about communication, specifically how it is layered and context-dependent. In our families, we often assume that words and gestures are shared only between us,
forgetting that our adult children have other conversations, other bonds, other audiences. This moment reminded me that communication is a living thing. It evolves as children become adults. It's not always linear or fully visible to us, but that doesn't mean it is less meaningful. Listening, even accidentally, offered insight into a world I'm no longer the center of, a world my daughter shares with someone else, and that realization deepened my understanding of her life. It also reinforced the delicate balance of love and respect. Family isn't just about closeness, it's about honoring boundaries, knowing when to step back, and trusting that the values, guidance, and support we've provided have helped our children navigate life independently. It's a reminder that parenting doesn't end, it transforms. From active guidance, it gradually shifts toward quiet observation, encouragement from the sidelines, and the freedom to let our children live their own lives fully. Finally, this experience highlighted the joy that comes from witnessing growth. Even if our role changes, we still share in the pride, the affection, and the subtle triumphs of our children's everyday lives. It's a lesson in humility, patience, and the quiet power of love that respects autonomy. And it underscores the truth that family is more than proximity or constant involvement. It is the enduring connection that adapts gracefully as each person carves out their own space in the world. In the end, a single misdirected voice message became a mirror, a reflection of trust, independence, and the evolving rhythm of parenthood. It reminded me that love is strongest when paired with respect, and that the truest gift we give our children is not only guidance, but also the freedom to live, to love, and to grow in their own unique way. Life is full of unexpected little moments, like the one I just shared, that remind us about love, respect, and the beautiful independence of our children. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories that celebrate these meaningful experiences. I'd love to hear from you too. Share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. Your stories can inspire and connect us all. If you'd like to support this channel and help me create more heartfelt content, there's a donation link in the description. Even a small contribution makes a big difference and means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is love, respect, and the freedom to live their own lives. See you in the next video.